Wherever I can take steps to expand opportunity for more families on my own, I will.
Folks, Madeleine Albright, the first female Secretary of State of the United States, she's wrote a book. It's called Fascism, a Warning. Although it's very interesting, I've looked at two different interviews. They're pretty much the same, but let's take a look, shall we?
Well, former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright is warning of a looming worldwide political threat.
Warning of a looming political worldwide threat?
During her career in public service, Albright met with controversial political figures, including former North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il. Albright argues in her new book, Fascism, a warning that contemporary leaders are turning to the same tactics used by fascists like Hitler and Mussolini nearly a century ago. She writes, quote, "We should be awake to the assault on democratic values that has gathered strength in many countries abroad and that is dividing America at home."
Attacking Democrats? Wait, who's attacking Democrats?
Secretary Albright is joining us now with this book, which is so important and comes at such a pivotal time in our country and I would say the world as well. You talk about your family escaping Czechoslovakia when the Nazis invaded, only to escape once again once the communists came to power. Talk about any similarities that you see now percolating that obviously you went through and the world went through nearly a century ago.
Well, thank you all for having me and raising and letting me talk about this issue. I was born in 1937, and in 1938 an agreement was made called the Munich Agreement, which appeased a dictator, Hitler. And I think that that's a lesson out of that.
She's saying on television, she's actually telling the world what Obama worked so hard to get out of history books about Hitler, the Holocaust.
Have to understand what is going on and not give in to evil. And then after the war, when, as a result of agreements made during the war, Europe was divided and the communists, quote, liberated, the Red Army liberated Czechoslovakia. And so you have to be aware of the kinds of things that are going on, that these really are kind of one step at a time. And the thing that I'm warning about are the steps that are there that we aren't paying enough attention to. And
one feather at a time. Isn't that what Obama did with the executive orders? Yeah. He would do this when the country would be busy doing something else.
These steps that people think don't matter, and it's normalizing the abnormal. And that's why I think it's a warning. And I have said, you know, that statement, see something, say something. I've added to that, do something. Yes. And that's what I'm advocating. I'm looking at what the history was of Mussolini and Hitler, but also looking at what's going on now in countries, in Hungary, where they just had an election, in Turkey, in the Philippines, in Poland, and in Venezuela are just the examples that are happening now.
So you're talking about relentless power grabs, essentially. So who is doing the appeasement? What can the world do?
Well, I think what we're doing is kind of normalizing some of this and thinking this is just a step. And what is really happening is that there are leaders that are reacting to something that is happening within societies. People are not happy, that's for sure. Some as a result of technology and they've lost their jobs. Some as a result of immigrants coming into their countries. And these leaders are grabbing power by identifying themselves with one group and then
with
fear, and then also kind of excluding the individual rights of other people and being above the law and undermining democratic institutions. Mining of the press and talking about the press as the enemy of the people, a president who thinks that he's above the law, the use of slogans and meetings to really generate even more division.
Why is it every Democrat and liberal has forgotten about the riots, looting, ongoing race division by several shootings on black people aired constantly, that Obama sent Al Sharpton and Eric Holder to each? These riots that vehicles could not get through without people who would get pulled out of their vehicles and beat. The vehicles would get damaged, or some would just accelerate through the crowd, while a white person would be shot. Hear about the moment it happens, then crickets.
In societies, and a lack of sense of what democratic institutions are.
So who's missing the signals here? Is it the American government, American senators, the president? Is it Europe? Is it the populations? Who are the ones missing the signals?
I think, frankly, everybody, because people do want some answers, but I'm particularly concerned about the democratic institutions that are. The first article of our Constitution is about Congress. And I want them to really understand what's happening.
I want to read from part of your book because I think you hit that point. You write, if we think of fascism as a wound from the past that had almost healed, putting Trump in the White House was like ripping off the bandage and picking at the scab. What has Trump done?
Well, I think part of the issues here, first of all, he's attacked the free press.
Attacked the free press? Yes. So that's so much worse than demanding networks to fire news anchors or owning the news channels and the newspapers.
Which is central to having a democracy. He acts as though he's above the law.
Is she really going to go there? Trump acts like he is above the law. He's the president for the people. You remember the immigration law without Congress?
Wherever I can take steps to expand opportunity for more families on my own, I will.
I'm going to have to act alone because we don't have enough resources. We've already been very clear. We run out of money. And we are going to have to reallocate resources in order to just make sure that some of the basic functions that have to take place down there, whether it's making sure that these children are properly housed or making sure that we've got enough immigration judges to process their cases, that those things get done. And that's why today I'm beginning a new effort to fix as much of our immigration system as I can on my own, without Congress. America cannot wait forever for them to act. And that's why today I'm beginning a new effort to fix as much of our immigration system as I can on my own, without Congress.
And actually, he did things like treason, tyranny, things that you and I would be put in prison for pretty much the rest of our lives.
He has, in fact, used kind of rallies and propaganda and provide
Rallies. Seriously? She wants to go there about Trump? Really? Rallies? Did she seriously go there with Trump?
provided a lot of simplistic answers to questions.
Gives simplistic answers? What does she want him to do? Write an essay?
And does not respect the rights of others.
Does not care about the rights of others. He's the president for the people.
Yesterday, he called from inside the cabinet room. He called the FBI raid on his personal attorney an attack on our country.
Well, I find that ridiculous, and it's one of those things where, as I said, we can't have a leader that feels that he is above the law.
And actually, he did things like treason, tyranny, things that you and I would be put in prison for pretty much the rest of our lives.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. And you can keep your plan if you are satisfied with it.
If you like the plan you have, you can keep it.
If you like your plan and you like your doctor, you won't have to do a thing. You keep your plan. If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan. If you've got health insurance, you can keep it. If you like your health care plan, you will keep your plan. If you've got health insurance, you like your doctor, you like your plan, you can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan. If you have insurance that you like, then you will be able to keep that insurance. If you like your doctor or health care plan, you can keep it. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan.
If you like your private health insurance plan, you can keep your plan.
If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. If you like your private health insurance plan, you can keep it. If you want to keep the health insurance you got, you can keep it.
If you like the insurance plan you have now, you can keep it.
And if you like your insurance plan, you will keep it. So if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your plan, keep your plan. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you're happy with what you got, nobody's changing it.
What about the Libyan Civil War? Remember that? Benghazi?
Well, it's too early to know exactly how this came about, what group was involved.
Nobody understood exactly what was taking place during the course of those first few days. What we do know is that the natural protests that arose because of the outrage over the video were used as an excuse by extremists to see if they can also directly harm U.S. interests.
We had no actionable intelligence that an attack on our post in Benghazi was planned or imminent.
Contrary to the White House's public statements, which were still being made a full week later, it's now well established that the Americans were attacked by al-Qaeda in a well-planned assault.
It was a non-event, the video in Libya, and we had heard nothing about protests.
The law enforcement source who said to me, from day one, we have known clearly that this was a terrorist attack.
Everyone who spoke tried to give the information that they had. As time has gone on, the information has changed.
There had not been a protest, but that there were elements had been involved in the attack, extremist elements, and that it was a terrorist attack.
Again, we were misled that there were supposedly protests and then something sprang out of that, an assault sprang out of that. And that was easily ascertained that that was not the fact. And the American people could have known that within days, and they didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
Hey everybody, it's Jake Tapper from CNN State of the Union and factcheck.org. Today, following the release of the final congressional report on the tragedy in Benghazi, Libya on September 11, 2012, we're going to take a look at statements made by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton publicly and compare them to what she was saying about the attack privately. On September 11, 2012, at about 10 p.m., the night of the attack, Clinton issued a statement saying that, quote, some have sought to justify this vicious behavior as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet. Now, in that statement, Clinton's referring to that online anti-Muslim video that had sparked protests elsewhere in the world. An hour later on that same day, however, Clinton sent an email to her daughter, Chelsea, that made no reference to the video. It blamed, quote, an al-Qaeda-like group group. The day after the attack, September 12th, Clinton issued her first in-person statement, and she also referenced the video.
Some have sought to justify this vicious behavior along with the protest that took place at our embassy in Cairo yesterday as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet.
On that same day, September 12th, according to notes taken by a Foreign Service worker, Hillary Clinton told the Egyptian prime minister that the attack, quote, had nothing to do with the film, unquote. On September 21st, Hillary Clinton publicly called it a terrorist attack for the first time.
What happened in Benghazi was a terrorist attack, and we will not rest until we have tracked down and brought to justice the terrorists who murdered 4 Americans.
On October 15th, Hillary Clinton gave an interview to CNN in which she blamed the fog of war for why the Obama administration seemed to blame this entire incident initially on this anti-Muslim video, even though the State Department privately never thought that was the case.
In the wake of an attack like this, in the fog of war, there's always going to be confusion. And I think it is absolutely fair to say that everyone had the same intelligence.
Here's the bottom line. In the thick of a tough re-election campaign in which the president was arguing that terrorists were on the run, the Obama administration was quick to cite the video and claim that this was a spontaneous attack, and very slow to acknowledge what the attack on Benghazi was: a planned terrorist attack. Hillary Clinton contributed to that false impression, even though the State Department and Hillary Clinton seemed to know from the beginning that this was a terrorist attack. A reminder to all the politicians out there, you're perfectly entitled to your own opinion, not to your own facts. I'm Jake Tapper for CNN State of the Union and factcheck.org.
Meanwhile, timing is everything. On the heels of a deadly terror attack that looked like it was carried off by a Middle Eastern refugee who was arrested, released, and on a terror watch list, the U.S. refugee resettlement is accelerating here in the United States. President Obama's final months. This as he's releasing former terrorists from Guantanamo Bay. Here now, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, former Republican presidential candidate and a Fox News contributor. So, Governor, we have another Mideast terrorist attack, apparently carried off by a guy who was a refugee. He was captured, in jail for 4 years, released. And in light of all that, the president is thinking of releasing more Gitmo prisoners and bringing in more Middle Eastern refugees. Can you make sense of that?
Nobody can. Look, Obama appears to be a slow learner when it comes to the challenge that we face if you bring in Syrian refugees that haven't been vetted. We have no idea who they are. Surely he could learn something from Angela Merkel right now, and I think she's learning it the hard way because her whole country is outraged at the fact that she was so adamant of bringing in these Syrian refugees, over 1 million of them, to Germany. Most people in America, I think, especially right here at the Christmas season, realize that there is a lot of ways to celebrate Christmas, but bringing in people that could disrupt our families, our peace, that isn't one of them.
And I thought Gitmo was down to the hardest of the hard in terms of the evidence against the suspects. I know they're all considered suspects because there hasn't been a criminal trial there, but still, if you're releasing anybody from Gitmo now, there's good evidence that they're terrorists.
Well, all the people are there because they either were terrorists, they're detainees. Not one of them is there, David, because they sang too loud in church last week. None of them. Right. I've been to Gitmo. I'm going to tell you, this is a very humane place where they're being treated. They're given far better accommodations than any prisoner in a federal or state prison in America. But let's remember why they're there. They're not there for any other reason other than they are suspected of either killing Americans or plotting to kill Americans. And for us to release them, as we have done in the past, results in a huge, huge disaster. We've seen some of these folks that were going to be released back into a friendly country, and as soon as they got there, they were turned back onto the streets, and some of them have participated in plotting against Americans. You know, you don't change the, the stripes of the tiger just because you put a fresh coat of paint on it.
The law and the rule of law is the most essential part of a democratic system.
Rule of law. Most essential part of a democratic system.
Your take on some of the top foreign policy challenges for this president? Yeah,
I have to ask you, would you have done the same thing that the president did to get Bergdahl back?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Let me say a couple things. Obviously, no one is lamenting the fact that an American serviceman is going to be back with his family. But the president's considerations have to go beyond that. It has to be about acting in the national security of the United States, and it has to be about following the law. Number one, the president has violated the law here. The law is very clear. He must give congressional notification 30 days before any prisoner in Guantanamo is released. He failed to do that. Apparently, the only person he told was Harry Reid. Didn't even tell the chairwoman of the Intelligence Committee, a Democrat, Dianne Feinstein. And then beyond that, what the precedent that the president has set is a dangerous one. He has basically told terrorist elements around the world that if you take an American serviceman hostage, you could get 5, 6, 3, however many number of your own folks released. And these are dangerous people.
Well,
these are people that are returning to the battlefield.
Do you think it was a means to the end? Because if you recall back in January, President Obama in the State of the Union talked about the fact that 2014 was going to be the year when he wanted to close Gitmo.
Yeah, his argument is that, first of all, that's something he's tried to do from the day he got elected. He doesn't, because he doesn't view this as a war. And in fact, when it comes to Afghanistan, he has all but proclaimed the war is over. Now, it may be over for him, but it's not over for the Taliban, who, and by evidence of the fact that these 5 very dangerous individuals are not just probably, they are likely to return to the battlefield at some point in the future. Meantime, that we've set this extraordinarily dangerous precedent and created an incentive for other groups to do the same thing.
Let's look at the recidivism rate, because out of the 614 former detainees that have been transferred, 104 have re-engaged in terrorism. Another 74, 12.1%, are suspected of doing so. So that makes a total of about 29% who go back out and commit crimes. But I want to ask you this. Did the intel community support this transfer or not?
Well, he didn't notify the intelligence committees. I mean, obviously some of us who are up here in intelligence committees were aware of discussions 3 or 4 years ago, but he didn't notify anybody. He went out and unilaterally did this, and I would mention in violation of the law. And again, I mean, this is a pattern of behavior by this White House. He believes somehow that he's become a monarch or an emperor that can basically ignore the law and do whatever he wants. And there's a real growing frustration, even among Democrats, at this sort of behavior.
Well, Democrats, yes, they are very upset that they didn't know about it. But I guess it's a different question to ask, what would you have done instead? So, Senator Rubio, what would you have done instead?
Well, first of all, I would have loved to have him back with his family, and I think that's something I would continue to work towards, but not in exchange for what he's done here. He has released 5 enemy combatants actively engaged in a war against us, members of terrorist organizations, 5 of not just anybody's, but some very dangerous individuals. One was a senior commander in the Taliban, who are soon going to be re-engaged against the United States in some way or fashion. This is not something that anyone who's in charge of our national security as a commander-in-chief should have engaged in doing.
I want to get your quick comments on Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, tweeted this. Really sad to watch Obama haters attack this kid who chose to fight to protect the rest of us just to score political points. And you'd say what?
Well, I'm not sure who he's referring to. I've never attacked him. His name's never come out of my mouth in any negative way. As I said, I think we're all glad that he's back with his family. I think this was the wrong way to do it, because I think as commander-in-chief, you have a greater responsibility to the national security of the United States, now and in the future. And this decision the president has made directly endangers the security of millions of Americans potentially in the future.
All right, Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Well, let me just push back briefly on that, which is that Republicans would say, look, he won an election, the American people elected him, and what his critics will do is the minute he does something they don't like, they say he's a fascist, and that overstates the case.
I'm actually not saying he's a fascist. I'm saying that there's certain elements of the kinds of behavior that he has that reminds me of a variety of issues that have taken place. But I think that this is not about just this election. This is about what is going on in our society in terms of respect for democratic principles.
Respect for Democrats. What happened to respect for Republicans?
I think Trump is the most undemocratic president I have ever seen.
I think she's got a couple screws loose because he's not a Democrat. He's a Republican.
In American history. And so that's what worries me. But I do think that we all need to pay attention, which is why this is a warning. That's what the book is about. One of the people that I quote in the book is Mussolini, and one of the things he said, which is so telling, is if you pluck a chicken one feather at a time, people are less likely to notice.
One feather at a time. Isn't that what Obama did with the executive orders? Yeah. He would do this when...
I think that what's been happening in the last few days, there are a couple of feathers that have come out of the chicken.
When you say, will we stop Trump, what do you mean exactly? Before his term is out, or just vote him out of office next time? How do you mean that?
Well, I think that we have to watch what's going on. I think that I have been also saying that it's Article 1 time. The first article of the Constitution is about the power of Congress, and I would like to see them be more proactive in terms of trying to figure out what's going on and to be more supportive of the kinds of investigations that are out there. I'm not a lawyer and a legal expert on all these things, but I do think that we need to be very vigilant, and I do think on my to-do list is we need people to go out and vote, and young people and older people to go out and run for office. And then the other part that I've really been talking about, I would really like to see some civil discourse. People I think that know me know this. I spent a lot of time with Jesse Helms. I respect Republicans. I may not agree, but I do think that what we need is some kind of civil discourse, and I think we need to listen to those young people that were marching so that they didn't have to wear flak jackets to school. So all those aspects is what I was talking about.
So Article 1 time means more investigations of the Russian relationship in addition to the ones that are already taking place, or how do you mean for Congress to be more aggressive?
Well, I think on the Russian relationship is very important, and the part we clearly know the Russians did something. There's no question. And because President Trump is so concerned as to whether he was really elected,
it was already proven that was the Democrats, Hillary and Soros. Why do you think Hillary was so certain she was going to win? Soros is so good at rigging elections. Can't the Democrats just get past the fact that Hillary lost?
He will not look into that. And so it is very undermining of our legal system. And so I do think that's one of the things that needs to be investigated even more.
Everybody just run out and buy the book. And then write an essay. But don't leave simplistic answers, because we know how Madeleine Albright does not like simplistic answers. So make sure you get out a dictionary and a thesaurus, and make sure you use very long words. Send it to her. So you guys have a good day and a good night, and see you tomorrow. Don't forget to check out the Patreon page. Like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.